Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, and me, Greg the Single Guy. We are recording episodes from around the globe to tell you about the best kept secret in education. That's right, it's teaching overseas. We're glad to have you join us. Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast. I am Greg the Single Guy, and I'm joined by fresh off vacation Kent the Maldives Cat Guy. And Matt is still on vacation, I think, so Matt the Family Guy won't be joining us. How you doing, Kent?
I'm great. I was the only cat in the Maldives. Didn't see a single cat for the entire week.
You just saw fruit bats or something. Well, I tell you what, Kent.
Saw a lot of chickens and a lot of shorebirds and a lot of sand and a lot of water. A couple turtles, a dolphin, and one bat. That's all they got there, one bat.
Did you meet anybody from Singapore or maybe is currently living in Singapore?
Wait a minute. No, not Singapore. Sri Lanka. Is that right? Is that the capital of Sri Lanka? Is that Colombo?
Yes, it is.
Well, then tons of people from Sri Lanka were there, but not Singapore. But I understand that we're going to get a chance to get to know someone very well from Singapore.
Actually, we're going to get to know him because we just met him about 3 minutes ago. I would like to welcome David Schneer, and he's working at a school in Singapore currently, and we know nothing about him. Welcome to the show, David.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. I can't wait to find out what happens.
Well, you're going to laugh, that's for sure. Yeah. If anything, you'll at least laugh at Kent, right?
I usually get edited out, so just ignore whatever I say. Dave, where do you call home?
Oh, goodness. We're going to start there. That's a very difficult question to answer. I've been abroad now.
Are you in the witness protection program? Is that part of the problem?
Well, part of the program says that I can't really mention what program I'm in.
Okay, yeah. Now, home can be complicated. Where are you? Where were you born?
Originally, I'm from Texas, which sometimes considers itself part of the United States, and
yeah.
I left Texas soon after graduating from university and moved to Japan, and lived there. And I in total. I've been back and forth, but in total it's about 15 years. So I've been in Singapore for about 10 years now. So home is somewhere between those three countries.
Okay, so let me see if I get this straight. So Texas for about 10 years.
Texas, I was born in Texas and I left after university.
You left, so you went all the way
I did
through
not graduate university when I was 10.
So you went all the way through, which college did you go to in Texas?
You wouldn't know it. Southern Methodist.
Okay. Is that SMU?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You know, when I was in my teen years or younger, SMU had they had that football team, and they got swiped badly, and they called it the death sentence back then. Is that right, SMU?
Well, this is right. And so anytime that I say I'm from Dallas, I get usually one response, oh yes, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And then anytime I say I'm from, I graduated from Southern Methodist as an undergrad, they say, oh yeah, your football team was in a lot of trouble. So
yeah, I think Texas took the second one harder. Okay, we can edit that in post if we need to. What do you think, Greg? Greg, we can't hear you. Greg, you've gone mute. Talk about witness protection. We can no longer hear you. No.
Oh, yeah.
Go back
your
on.
mic's.
All right.
There we go.
There you are. You're back.
I think it's a small world out there. David, I lived 100 years ago in Dallas, and I worked for Warner Brothers studio stores back when they had them and sold Bugs Bunny T-shirts and stuff and artwork.
No way.
I went and said, I'm going to learn Spanish. So I took a Spanish course at night at SMU. I'm pretty proud of that. So it's one of the many hundreds of colleges that I've taken a course from. So yes, I can feel you there. Did you ever teach in the States?
No. Literally 3 months after graduating university, I went to teach in Japan. and never
All
went
right, hold
back
on,
to
back up a second. Hold on a second. What did you study at university?
He studied education.
Did you? Are you sure? Let's find out. Do we even need you for the interview? We could just talk about it.
Can't let him talk.
Right.
Feel free to make
so
up
you go to
any-
university. What do you study at SMU?
I studied. I majored in English literature, and I have a minor in music, and I also did education as part of that, so that I could get my teaching license.
So you did.
I'm
You
going to
got your
say this.
license.
Listen, I'm going to edit this out in a second here, Kent. We have to calm down. We're making him uncomfortable. You keep
No,
interrupting him.
you're
And so
not.
do I.
Trust me.
We're like
You're
this.
fine.
We're terrible. I've been
It's-
researching. I've had lots of time alone and researching about podcasts, and Kent keeps interrupting you. I got to turn his volume. I'm going to edit him out completely. See you, Kent. Bye.
Good. Nice to meet you, David. Have a good
That was
weekend.
Kent.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you guys do it without me and just
I was
make
gonna
up
say, why
information?
don't you let me know when I can speak? All right, now I'm going to get this back. All right, as usual, I'll get this back on track. So you get certified to teach in the U.S., and then do you apply to teach in Texas, or you just get on the plane for Japan? How does that happen?
Well, I got hired straight out of university to teach in Eikaiwa, which is a language school, and it was a pretty good deal for a university grad. They set you up with a job, and they give you a place to live and insurance, and a nice little bubble of a life. And so that's what I did, and I lasted for about 8 months, and then I went on to bigger and better things. That wasn't a very nice thank you to the company, I suppose. But
So when you say you went on to bigger and better things, you stayed in Japan for about 10 years. Is that right?
total, I was in Japan for about 15, but I've been back and forth. So after the language school, I went on to teach at a. It was I don't know how to translate it exactly. It was an English language college, I guess, is a good translation, where I taught adults and also high school kids, university students, but it was older students for sure. And I was there for I think 5 years, but it was a really, really cool place. So check this out. One of the selling points of the school was that anytime a student spoke English, they were required to pay the school 1,000 yen, which is about the equivalent of $10. And that wasn't only if they spoke English on the premises, it was if they spoke English on the block that the school was on. And that attracted quite a few students. And another component of the school was that they had to take a drama class where they made their own drama and produced their own drama and acted in their own drama. And it was a very eccentric school. And to this day, I've never seen anything like it. And I was there for quite a while.
So you ended up leaving that school. What made you?
Oh no,
move on
Kent,
from
there's
them?
more. After that, I went to a Japanese private high school. Do you guys know? Do you know what a magnet school is?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was basically a magnet school for languages, and this is an American term. I don't know if there's. I'm sure there are. It's a school where the specialization is on a certain subject, right? And our special subject was languages. So of course, our biggest focus at the high school was English, but we also taught Russian and Korean, I believe. And I was there for about 5 years. And then after that, I jumped into international school teaching.
Wow. Greg, am I mistaken, or is that the wildest route we've heard to an international school yet?
I think it rates right up there. I think, David, it's fascinating that you've gone. I haven't heard of this kind of, like the first school you mentioned that you went overseas with Japan. I hope you give me the link so we can share that out with people. I know that there's lots of different avenues to get into teaching overseas. but it's a great story. I love how you've gotten into it. And let's continue a little bit with your international teaching then. So did you go right to Singapore where you are now, or did you go teach somewhere else?
I went right
international
to
school setting.
Yeah. So I'd been in Japan, and then it was just it was time to. I thought it was time to leave, so we'd been to Singapore several times, mainly as a stopover when we were my wife and I were visiting Thailand, and we always ended up stopping over in Singapore, and we're just impressed with it. And I thought, that's where I want to live. That's where I want to work. And my wife said, "Well, that's great for you. What about
jump in
me?"
here for a second?
Sure.
Where along the way, I know I'm going to interrupt you, but just where on the way did the wife come into the picture? It just seemed to me as if the cast got bigger all of a sudden, and I wasn't sure. Was I in the bathroom? I'm not sure. When did you get married?
Well, we'd started dating soon after I moved to Japan, and we'd been together for a while. We ended up getting married in 2002 while I was at
is she
the
Japanese national?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm ready to move to Singapore, and I said, "We're moving to Singapore," and she said, "What?"
Yep.
And the deal was that, okay, if we're gonna move to Singapore, then she said, I get to come home and visit family, every month or every 3 months. And I thought, all right, well, if that's what we're gonna have to do, then fine. And we moved to Singapore, and that was my that was my first international school. And I had to remind her a year later to come back to Japan to visit her family because she'd forgotten all about it.
I love that. That is brilliant. Now, was she working? What was she doing in Singapore?
Yeah, she was. She was working a bit here and there. Nothing full time. Yeah.
Oh, is that me now, Ken?
There's
a lot of editing going on
probably
in
that
this
she'd
show.
want me to. I could probably find her and pull her on if you guys wanted to talk to her, but I assure you, I'm far more interesting.
So, can I
go
put you both on the? I'd like to put you both on the spot because who has been studying Japanese is Kent, and
really?
he
Okay.
loves a lot of things about Japan and Japanese language and culture. So I was wondering, can I put you both on the spot? And feel free to talk about me if you want, but can you guys throw a little Japanese in this?
Sure.
Just how about David-san, o genki desu ka?
はい、元気
元気
で。
ですす。
それだけですか？そのくらい日本語できますか？
Well, gee, you're very good. Wow. I was going to ask you about the weather. Tenki wa genki desu?
天気は今は全然ダメですよ。今すごい雨降ってます。
雨が降ります。
はい。
雪が降ります。
雪、シンガポールで。シンガポール雪ないよ。
That's right. Did we lose Greg? Did Greg
Yes.
just...
No, you
he
lost
just
your
disappeared.
entire audience because I didn't want you guys to go off on this. I know once you get Kent talking and laughing, you can't stop. But
Now,
I
hold
think
on.
it's
Now,
fascinating. That's fascinating that both
we
of
can't
you
see
are.
you anymore, Greg. We can't see you anymore.
I can.
You can see
can
him?
see
Okay,
me,
that's
but-
all that matters. That's all that matters. I've seen him enough. David, where did you learn? Did you go to school for your Japanese? Obviously, your wife is Japanese. How did you develop your language skills?
I think it was probably through various CIA torture techniques that extended over decades.
Yeah.
It has
That's
not
a
been
typical
in,
Japanese teacher.
yeah,
They'll
at the
waterboard
schools.
you.
It worked.
I love now your wife. How's her English? Did she learn her English from you?
No. She spoke English long before me. I worked really hard on Japanese, and so before I started teaching at secondary school, I started work about 1 in the afternoon usually, and so in the mornings I dedicated my time to studying Japanese. I must have been at every Japanese school in Tokyo, and and so I spent a lot of time doing that. Yeah.
All right, so Greg, sorry, I'm going to jump in again. I know that I'm taking all of Dave's time here. So Dave, you're living in Japan. I'm taking a step back here. You're living in Japan. You've met your wife. You're married. You've got excellent language skills. The two of you. Her family is there. You have had a number of jobs, and you could probably go out and find more jobs in Japan. What made you want to leave all that? Because as you know, on our podcast, we know tons of teachers whose Japan is like their ultimate goal, to go and live and teach, and in my case, go and the maid cafe and the cat cafe and the manga and the anime. So what is it that you appear to be living the dream life there in Japan? What made you think, let's make that transition to Sri Lanka? Was the Yakuza after you, or maybe your wife's parents?
Well, her parents were members of the Yakuza, so I think that...
I love that.
I think it's a variety of factors. At that point, I'd been in Japan for quite a while, and it was time to experience living in another country. Like I said, we really loved Singapore, but another side of that too was just I didn't really know if it was a feasible route to continue teaching in Japan. I knew ever since I started teaching that this is what I wanted to do. There's nothing else that I wanted to do, and I thought that I'd pretty much reached the top of the game where I was at the high school. I was working at a great high school that specialized in English education. It was the best place that I could think of. I didn't want to go into university. I ended up doing a master's degree in teaching English, and so I had a master's in TESOL from a brand name university. I didn't want to go teaching into university, and that's what a lot of teachers in Japan do, is they end up going and teaching at the university level. I love high school and middle school, and I wanted to stay at that level, and I thought really the best opportunities for me were outside of Japan. I just didn't see many career prospects. But I recognize your point and appreciate it. A lot of people do want to move to Japan. And, being in Japan is like, once you're there for a while, it's like a biker gang. You never really get out. Even after you leave the country, you're still always drawn back, and you talk to people that have lived in Japan, and they get this reminiscent, wistful look in their eye and say, yes, Japan, maybe one day I'll go back. So we ended up after, now Kent, this is going to throw you off again because there's another character to the story, but after living in Singapore for a while, our son was born. And,
congratulations, yeah.
Well, that was 12 years ago, but thanks, I'll tell him. And,
and I'm just finding out now? What? I thought we were so close, David.
Yeah. We did send you a card, but... So about 3 years after he was born, we did go back to Japan.
Okay.
And I went to an international school there.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay, yes.
Let me ask you a question about your family then. And
sure.
It's a language based. We're talking about language here. Your wife grew up speaking English and Japanese and probably other languages. You have
She didn't grow up speaking English. She after high school she went to like an English language college and learned English there.
All right. Like I said, your wife didn't learn English until after high school, and you learned Japanese along the way. I do have a very good question though, and this has to do with
It's about
family.
time. All right, good.
Yeah, it's about time one of us did.
I've been wanting to ask you for years because I didn't get birthday cards either. I mean, seriously. Yeah. So, when you're mad at each other, what language do you guys speak?
Oh, okay. Well, there's so many questions that you could have asked about language, and you went with the violence and the conflict.
When you're in conflict or when you're emotional, and it doesn't even have to be a fight. When you're excited, when you are emotional, and I speak other languages, but I will, I might veer off into my mother tongue. And like my mom doesn't know this, but I actually got into fights with a girlfriend down in Venezuela in Spanish. I mean, I could rip her a new one just by, in Spanish. I was right up there. My mom thinks I can only order food, but we would only speak Spanish together.
Yep.
Just wondering about your family environment. You don't even have to talk about fighting, but your family environment, your son and your wife and you, do you guys talk English and Japanese, like pretty much back and forth?
All right. Well, my family has the misfortune of having a husband and a father that teaches English language for a living. So, of course, I've brought in
how horrible
the language rules into the family. And even before Noah was born, how awful is this? My wife and I had language rules because we both wanted to improve, our languages, Japanese and English. What it used to be, before my son was born, my wife and I would speak Japanese on the weekdays and English on the weekends. And we kept that up for years. And then after my son was born, the rule is one parent, one language, typical home language maintenance rules. And then when my wife and I speak, we speak in Japanese. So, to get back to your question, when we fight in Japanese, which ensures that I lose the debate, the argument, every time. And she really has no problem with the unfair advantage.
David, my wife and I have language rules too. I'm allowed to speak with permission.
Well, at least you're allowed to speak.
At least I'm allowed to speak. Go ahead,
David.
Greg, sorry.
Does your son speak both Japanese and English then?
Yeah. We're we made the decision when he was born to raise him in a bilingual and a bicultural home.
He's like me. I have a Japanese father and an American mother.
Oh, okay. So
he's
grew up
half-half.
speaking. I'd like to think he's whole.
Listen, my father is Japanese. He does not speak Japanese. Okay, he's the 10th of 10 in America. His grandparents had come over, and by the time he came around, they just stopped trying to. He just was all English because his brothers and sisters were talking to him. They were interned for the 3 years in World War II, and he just came out with English only. So his parents, he did not have a common language with his own parents.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And hence the reason I talk about family and language, because not only are you a language teacher by trade, and it's also a passion for you, but I know that Kent and I both hold languages very dearly. I mean, it's a great conversation that's gone way off to that end, but it's so important because when you're overseas with your family, it matters a lot how your family unit sticks together. And one follow-up question then, what language does your son prefer?
English for sure. Well, he went to a Japanese kindergarten when we were in Japan, but as soon as he hit grade 1, he started his international education, and so he's been in English medium schools.
Right, like most of the international schools are English lingua franca, meaning that you learn in the language. There might be other languages surrounding you, other mother tongues. Our school has probably 50 different mother tongues, but we speak in English when we teach and when other kids are together. And it's that bridge that everybody shares. And of course, it's the number one language for certain things in the world.
Yeah.
One follow-up comment, I was going to say I can empathize with that only because, and this comes up from Venezuela once again, in my history, I was hanging out with a family a lot, and Chris and his wife, Amma, that live in China right now, their boys were growing up, and they were probably 3 and 5. And I asked Chris one day, I said, who is Canadian, first of all, English-speaking Canadian, and his wife was Venezuelan. So their kids were growing up in an international school around Grandpa and Grandma in Spanish a lot too, right? They were locally there, and his Canadian parents in Canada had their influence. But I asked Chris one time, what language do your kids prefer? And he said, well, it's not that they prefer it, but if you want to learn and see what a child speaks normally, go to a sandbox when they're younger. And of course that's going to change over time, but I was so fascinated with that. He's like, yeah, well, there's no pressure, there's no instruction, there's no rules, whatever, and the two boys would play, they would play in Spanish. And I'm sure that's changed. I can't wait to get him on the podcast, but it's a good connection with family and language. And I'm sorry if I pried too deeply about you fighting in Japanese, but
no, not at all.
Is so cool. I love that. You've done a great job, it sounds like, with your Japanese.
If you could just relay that to my wife, I'd appreciate it. If you could just tell her.
Well, if I start getting notices about you having children, and if you quit leaving us out of this whole equation of birthday cards, I might.
Hey, that ends today.
That ends today.
The new relationship has started. Welcome to our family of education overseas. That's what our podcast is all about. All right.
Happy to be part of it.
A quick question. How big is the Japanese expat community in Singapore?
Very big, very big. So if you remember, I said that my wife had told me that if we moved to Singapore, part of the deal is she gets to go back. Well, one of the reasons that she didn't go back was because it was so easy for her to fit in with the Japanese community here and to find friends. And we're members of the Japanese Association, the Japanese Club, which has its own library and restaurants and things like that. So it's very easy to live here and be part of Japanese culture, retain that.
And for the listeners that have never been to Singapore or don't know much about Singapore, I've only been there for a little bit. Could you tell us what are the main languages that, maybe the main government languages or the main languages that you would normally hear around Singapore?
Sure. Singapore has 4 official languages, Mandarin Chinese, English, Tamil, and Bahasa Melayu or the Malaysian language.
That was English, Malay, Mandarin Chinese, and
Tamil.
What was the last one? And
Tamil. Yeah.
That is fascinating. So the government writes all of its documents in those 4 languages. You'll see those 4 languages around. I'm sure you hear lots of languages though, because when I was there, I heard, any language in the world seemed to be in Singapore. It's a hub of communication. It's
such a privilege to live here. I don't know if the stats are still accurate, but about 1/4, I think, of the population are foreigners or immigrants, and so there's just it's such an international place to live. There was a place that we used to live in our first time here, and I remember I used to sit outside at night and read or do something, and I would just listen to. We lived on a corner. And I would listen to overhear the conversations of the pedestrians as they walked by our place. And really, without exaggerating, somebody would walk by, a couple would walk by and they'd be speaking in Mandarin, and then the next couple would be speaking in Bahasa, and then we'd hear French, and then, it'd be English. And within the span of an hour, you would hear, 6 or 7 languages. It was really incredible.
So is the majority of business done in English?
Yeah. English, I think, is the dominant language. I say that. I think there's quite a bit that also goes on in Mandarin as well, though. But English is what you deal with the most here.
We'll take a moment's break now to remind you how to reach out to us. Of course, you can address any negative comments to Kent, the cat guy. We do love to hear from you. If you're out on Facebook, we don't do that, but our handle on both Instagram and Twitter are at ITPExpats with an S, ITPEXPATS. As a handle, if you want to, you can send us an old email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com, or you can visit us at our new website at www.itpexpat.com. www.itpexpat.com. educator.com. Well, back to the show.
What is it that you fell in love with about Singapore? Tell us a little bit about what it is about Singapore that draws so many people to it.
Oh my God, where do I start? I tell my students that I write a love letter to Singapore daily. I'll start with just the flora and the fauna. There was a display that we went to in the Botanic Gardens, which is an absolutely incredible verdant place in the country. It's beautiful, and there was a display of how Singapore had changed in terms of greenery since it's been a country. And Singapore might be the only country or one of a few countries that has actually become greener since it began, since its founding, right? And you notice that as soon as you leave the airport, you're just hit, you're overwhelmed with an array of colors and flowers and trees, and it's just beautiful to be here. And so you're in nature all the time. That's one of the things. It's so easy to get around. Public transportation is only comparable to places like Japan. The food is incredible. It's an international city. Things work here. Things work well, systems work, and you don't have the hassle of living in other places where things don't work. So there's really a lot to love about Singapore.
I remember being in Singapore, David. I'll let you continue, but I wanted to comment. The first time I've ever been in a city or country that I was waiting for the bus, and I got a local SIM card for the 2 weeks that I was there to visit my friends that had left since I was coming. Long story. I remember sitting at the bus depot or at the bus stop, and I got a text, and it said, "Your bus is 30 seconds away." I couldn't believe, and that was back in 2007 when I was visiting. I had gone there for Christmas, New Year's. I remembered going along the beaches. The flora and fauna was amazing, and I compare it to the only place that I've been to that I can compare that to, besides like Disney World, which is sort of fake, but Switzerland was very similar in my mind because I think of the details. It's like writing. It's the details that you include in your story. So Switzerland and Singapore are two countries in the world that I've been to where people pay attention to that little blade of grass that's on that little triangle between two streets that everybody else would ignore around the world. And those two countries have such detail in everything they do. They have high taxes. They have a whole different world, but it's very safe. There's a lot of rules, but it's a place that people just don't want to leave. And it's just a Shangri-La, I guess, if you want to call Shangri-La. It's a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
So have you been to Switzerland before?
Nope, I haven't been in Europe very much at all.
Okay, well, so that brings up my next question. Where do people go, since it's such a hub?
Yeah.
Maybe you can speak for yourself, actually, instead of everybody, because it's so tough. Where do people go on vacation if you're in this wonderful place, Singapore?
Bali is very popular in Indonesia, and Thailand. There's a lot of trips to Thailand. Maldives, when you have a bit more cash, Maldives is also a good place to go. Malaysia is right next door, so one of the things that we did when we first got here is we'd just take a local bus to the border of Malaysia, go through customs, walk across. When we got to the Malaysian immigration, we'd walk from Malaysian immigration to a hotel on the border and stay at a hotel for a night and do some stuff right there in the city, and then take a bus back to Singapore. So it's that easy to travel.
And there's a lot of difference in the cost of being in Malaysia versus the cost of being in Singapore. That's one of the draws, right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And have you been to Borneo then? Have you been to see what that's like?
Well, one of the international schools that I worked at my first time in Singapore, we took the grade 11s to Sarawak, and we spent a week there.
The school you work at now, is it a mixture of nationalities for your student body and a mixture for your staff? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I work at a very international school. some international schools have a dominant population of one one nationality. We have so many kids from all over the world. I think probably now, and which is true, is true of a lot of Singapore schools and will continue to be true. We have a large mainland Chinese population, but we also have so many different nationalities there. The staff, I would say, is pretty international as well. Typical of a lot of international schools, many of our teachers are from English-speaking Western countries, but not exclusively by any stretch of the imagination. We have a lot of Singaporeans and a lot of
Kiwis,
European
because Kiwis are my favorite to work with. I think that they do. Their lifestyle is just like, let's enjoy life, right? I think it's really important when we talk about all of our schools and our experiences in the past. It's important to know, and we've talked about different times, we've talked about international school differences, but to hear that you have an international school population of students, as well as a staff that's a big mixture, I think it's a unique opportunity. Not unique. It's a very special opportunity that some schools have overseas. Not everyone's like that. Our school right now is a private school, like you work at a private school. Our school is very Canadian American, and we have just a smattering of students, of staff that are from other countries, and that's the staff I'm talking about. But Our student body is worldwide. We have, like I said before, we have a lot of mother tongues. So Kent and I work among a staff which is predominantly American, and it's a little unfortunate. I can't change that, of course, and I totally love the school I work at. But I'm looking for, in the future, I'm looking for another school that was very international, right, as a staff as well as a student body.
If I may jump in, it's pretty easy where Greg and I work that the families are here because of a single industry, really, here in our region. What are the industries in Singapore that bring families, their parents? Is it finance? Is it manufacturing?
Government.
What do these government, diplomatic? What brings families to your school and to Singapore?
All of the above and more. Also, there's a lot of tech, but there are a lot of multinational corporations that have offices or headquarters here. So it's hard to pinpoint just one industry. It's really a wide array of everything. There's Facebook and Amazon. And there's oil here, so usually the fellow Texans that I meet are from Houston because of the oil. And then my son was best friends with a kid whose father was working for L'Oreal, regional work, and so it's just anything and everything. They're all in Singapore because of the ease of travel and connections.
I looked it up recently. There are 6 million people, according to 2023 stats from somewhere on the net, that there's 6 million people, and it's a very small country, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I have that somewhere here too. The density is like, I can't even tell you. I'd have to look it up, but it's a small country that you can get from one end to the other real quickly. It's fascinating that many people are there, and it's such a beautiful experience. Is there something that's hard to get used to in Singapore? That's a good question. I mean, it sounds like this perfect place. Is there something you have to get used to?
The weather. It's about 30 degrees Celsius every day, and it's humid, very very humid.
Yep.
So I think we've gotten used to it, but if there's one complaint that is very common, it's the weather. It's very difficult to adjust to.
Yeah. When I got back from the Maldives and landed here in the Middle Eastern desert, I'm like, whew, it's good to cool off a little bit. So for our listeners, tell us, what do you teach, David?
Currently,
I'm teaching EAL, English as an additional language. I'm head of department for high school EAL.
And so, does that mean you spend do you spend a whole day instructing, or is it more of an administrator type role?
A lot of my time is spent, most of my time is spent in the classroom. This year, it's classroom based, but usually my role also includes support with supporting teachers. Actually, I do have one class where it's with student support, but I'm not doing as much support as I normally do with helping teachers address the needs of English language learners. But so this year I'm working mostly with students.
Okay. And so you said you're at the high school level. That's 9, 10, 11, 12th grade?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. What about activities? Are you doing extracurricular stuff? Is there a large sports? What's it like?
Our school has a large variety of sports. I'm not involved in sports just because never been very good at them. But let's see, what am I involved in with after school activities this year? I'm running English. I'm not running English language learning CCA. I was doing an English and a Mandarin language exchange. I had a brilliant idea, and it flopped, like most of my brilliant ideas. I had this wonderful idea where all the kids who were non-native Mandarin speakers would get together with all the kids who were non-native English speakers who were also Mandarin speakers, and we'd come together once a week in a sharing of different cultures and languages, and we'd all progress together, and 3 kids showed up.
Oh, well, maybe at least 2 of them knew one language, the other one, maybe it still worked out.
I have a story to share.
Hold on, one more question. All right, go on. Yeah, your name's on the podcast. You get to share your story.
This is a piggyback off
the
of your story.
ITP with Greg Lemoine and company.
Oh my God, this is just...
Go on, I'm sorry.
My piggyback story is my first or second year of teaching was in Honduras, and I had about 32 fifth graders in a classroom. Most of them were bilingual. Very few were just, starting with English. They were all going through the same school from pre-kinder all the way up and beyond. So my brilliant idea, like yours, was to mesh the 2 languages. So I said, I have EAL and ELL was my background back in the States as well as elementary school. And I reached out to a friend of mine and I said, how about if we have my native Spanish speakers that speak a lot of English in this classroom? How about if I reach out to you and your first language English speakers reach out and try to do an English and Spanish exchange? She's like, oh boy, this is a great idea. So we reached out and she connected me with another homeroom that was very, very much English speaking, Midwestern, Caucasian, like I've never spoken. I'm taking Spanish. And she and I worked it out so that back in 2000 or so, that I would collect all the writings from my students and scan them and send them to the other teacher so that we could have a little control. Now, the other teacher did the same thing. She sent back responses. So each kid would write something, they'd respond and bring it back to me. And then I would say, I'm going to read it out to the class and they can enjoy my Spanish. So I got to the 3rd one I was reading in front of the class. And I said, hello, in Espanol, I was like, hello, my name is Sarah and I am 13 years old. And in Spanish, you have to say años, which means year. So in Spanish, you have to say, tengo 13 años. And oh my God, I got up in front of the class and in front of all these 5th graders, I said 13 años, 13 años, which means like asshole. So I stood up in front of this class. I know this is a family message here, but I got up in front of a class of 32 fifth graders and said, hi, my name is Maria, and I have 13 assholes. It was so crazy. It was one of those many mistakes and failures that we do as teachers, very innocent, but I don't think anybody will ever forget that one, including myself, right? Failure.
Well, probably a good thing that you stopped that program.
I stopped right there after that word. I couldn't continue because they're all laughing all day at me. I didn't even teach math after that. Every class was pretty much exempt for the rest of the day. Let's just sit around and talk about Mr. Lemoine right there.
Yeah.
I know Kent has some failures too. Come on, Kent, share a failure story.
I got too many to listen.
Then let's move on to let's have him do another story. Let's have him do a story
you want to just have
for
him do a
us.
story?
Well, we have something else on our show that we always do, and hopefully he prepared one. I'll put you on the spot, David. Can you share a police story with us?
I've got tons.
Or customs. Love it.
It's a life of a wanted man.
This is why I'm in charge, Kent.
I'm sorry, the ITP with Greg Lemoine and others.
You tell me how many police stories you want.
Yeah, give us the top two. What do you think?
Okay. I stand out in Japan by the way that I look. You guys may have not noticed, but I don't blend into the Japanese population very easily.
I'm gonna guess too. I know this is just video, but I'm gonna guess that you're maybe on the taller side.
Yeah, and muscular too. No.
Okay, we'll take
This is
that.
all
We'll
audio.
work with that.
You can sell it any way you want. This is all audio, buddy.
He's 6'5" Arnold Schwarzenegger here.
I'm gonna say you could come in at 6 feet over there.
Gosh, am I handsome?
Sorry to interrupt. You stick out. You do stick out.
Not tall. I just don't blend. I don't blend into a Japanese population very well. So I was on my way home from work when I was at the high school one day, and just to set the scene, we wore dress shirts and ties. That was just part of the dress code. So I'm coming home from, and because we're wearing, because we have to dress professionally, my bag was also a briefcase because I always thought it was weird to, have like a backpack when I'm wearing a suit and tie. So I have a briefcase and I have a tie and I have a dress shirt and I'm walking home from the train station and I'm taking a little side road. It's not the main street. And I see two men approaching me from the opposite direction, and they look like typical businessmen. I didn't think anything of it until they got close enough to ask me to stop. And they said, "Can you please stop? We'd just like to know where you're going. We're police." And so this is not the first time that I've been stopped by police because of the way that I looked in Japan. So I had a strategy. And like my plans, my strategies often fail big. So my strategy was to immediately just pretend like I don't speak Japanese. So I said, "Why are you stopping me? I'm just on my way home. I just got off of work." And I thought that would show them. And they said, "We need you to speak in Japanese, please. We're the police." And I said, "Oh, okay, I'm very sorry. Okay." And I started speaking in Japanese because I was a little intimidated by their polite demeanor. So they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, I'm just going home." And they said, "Well, where do you live?" And I said, "Why are you stopping me?" Because I'm an American citizen and I know my constitutional rights. This is what I'm thinking, right? I didn't say that.
That's gonna work.
Yeah. They said, "Well, where do you live?" And I swear to God, there's a phrase in Japanese that you can just say, which just means over there. I live over there. And I just said, "Over there." And that was enough to sate their curiosity. I just said, oh, I live over there. "Okay, fine. What are you doing?" I'm coming home from work. And then my confidence and courage started to build a little bit. And I said, "I need to know why you're stopping me because I'm not doing anything wrong."
Wow.
And they said, "Well, there's been a robbery in the area." And I'm thinking, was the guy who robbed the whatever they robbed wearing a tie? So I said, "Can you please show me your badges?" And they did show me their badges, and I wrote down their number. This was just the stupidest way I could have played this out. I mean, because they could have carted me off and kept me for interrogation, and that would have been within their power to do so, and that would have been perfectly legal. They could have done that for a certain amount of time. So stupid of me. And I took down their badge number, and finally I got out of the situation, and I went home, and I asked my wife, I think we were married at the time, I said, could you please call the police station and report these guys, because this is absolutely unacceptable. And she did. It took a little bit of convincing. She said, just let it go. Don't pursue this. And I said, no, this is not right. And so she did. She called the police station, and she got in charge of a captain or whatever. And she managed to extract an apology out of him, but he wouldn't give it direct to me, but he did apologize to her. But in all fairness, in Japanese culture, it's not hard really to get somebody to apologize, right? You look at somebody by mistake and you say, I'm sorry, or whatever. So anyway, it was enough to calm the situation. But I got stopped.
And that was the last time you were in Japan.
Yeah.
So let me take a step back here. I mean, I'm intrigued by this story now.
Okay.
Number one, most of the time in cultural references to the police in Japan, they're the guys that are uniformed, riding the bike, maybe in the koban, which is the box. Yep. The police box.
Yep.
But these guys,
the
neighborhood police box. But these guys are what, like detectives, or just like plain clothes suits? And first of all, why do they assume you spoke Japanese? Because most people in Japan, they come across a white guy, they're thinking, this guy doesn't know a thing. So I'm just curious why they knew you spoke Japanese.
I don't know if they knew it. I don't know what was going through their head. They just they said, we need you to speak Japanese, and lucky for them that I did. I think what I figured out later, or what I came to believe later, was it was really it was a power play, and one of the cops was older, the other one was younger, and I think the older one just wanted to show the younger one how powerful he was, and it was a display of authority in order to impress the younger cop. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story. I love that. That's one of my favorite police stories. Now, your second police story starts with a knock on the door that says, "Why did you call my captain?"
in the middle of the night. Yeah.
In the middle of the night. All right, Greg, any comments about that police story?
I'm just amazed, and I think it's funny. Was there anything? There's nothing like bribing or anything, is there, in that culture?
No.
Because I'll give you the brief version of my, older cop, younger cop experience. I was in Honduras, and this is maybe my third year of teaching there and living there, and I had gotten some street Spanish. So I went to get internet cable in a different part of the city, and it was not a very good part of the city, but they had cable that I could set up because we were splitting cable. We'd buy one cable and then split it between 4 apartments. And my guards we had 24-hour guards in a little shack, and they wanted to watch TV and have internet. So I went and got some cable for them. And I walked in. It took me like 2 minutes to go in, get the cable. Yeah, I went in, got 50 feet of cable, and came back out, and I was, alone doing this in some barrio. And there's one cop sitting on the hood of my car. And what I didn't know is that there had been enforcing a new parking law that you had to buy these little parking sheets and you put it on your dashboard. And we're talking about $17 to the dollar. So 17 lempiras to the dollar at the time. And these little chits would cost like I don't know, 40 cents, maybe 20 cents for like an hour. And I didn't have it on my car. So the point of my story is I came out there, and bribery, it does work down there in some parts of that city, in San Pedro Sula. It's very impoverished. So there is a mode of like paying off the police for things. And I was like, okay, first I tried to explain what was going on. We did it all in Spanish. I didn't pull the stupid gringo and switch to English until I got really stuck after about 40 minutes. So I was 40 minutes talking in Spanish, saying,
wow.
he's like, where are you from? And I said, I'm from this part of the city and this part. And we went talking, and he was adamant about pulling the power play that I had not followed the rules. And I tried to bribe him and give him, I pulled out some cash. I pulled out 100 lempiras, and all of a sudden, right next to him is this short, stocky, little older guy, like he's captain. And the guy looks at me and says, you can't bribe us.
Oh.
He's like, we need to write him up and take. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get thrown into in jail for trying to bribe a guy for a 20 cent little shit and a parking ticket for all things, right? But what happened was he had a roll of them. The captain had a roll of them in his pocket. And I said, hey, you know what? How about if we just solve this whole thing? I'd like to buy about a week's worth of parking passes from you. Could I do that? You have some in your pocket. And he's like, well, yes, we could do that. And so I paid him the money for about a week's worth of, I don't know, I pulled out like a couple hundred lempiras out of my pocket and paid him for this long roll that I never used again. But the rule of the story is don't bribe anybody unless you really know what you're doing. But that was the young cop and the old cop, and it was me in the middle of it. That little 2 minutes turned into about an hour and a half of argument.
That's a nice
What
save.
I love about that older cop is he was able to get an extra 100 out of you. That younger cop would have just went with the 100. The older guy says, no, let's fleece him for more.
Oh, I totally got fleeced, but it was their method, so they got to save face, right? It was not a bribe because I ended up buying tickets from them, right? So that was the big deal there, so I'm glad I came up with that. Wow.
All right.
Kent, you're up.
Nope, David's second story. I want to hear David's second story.
Oh, really?
His one story is better than anything I have. All right, let's go for it, David.
All right. Well, I think since we're on the motif of bribery, we'll stick with that. So this is in Thailand, and I was riding a scooter, and when I rented the scooter, I checked that everything was legal. My American driver's license, on my American driver's license, I am actually licensed to drive a scooter, a little motorcycle, right? So when I went to go rent a scooter in Thailand, I made sure that I was doing everything correctly. Wore my helmet. And so I'm on one of the busier streets in Thailand. This is in Chiang Mai. And I'm driving, and there's a police stop, and they're checking something. And the police officer comes to me and says, do you have a Thai driver's license? And I said, no, I have an American driver's license, but I rented this scooter, and the people there said that the American driver's license was sufficient. And he said, well, that's unfortunate because it's not. And I said, okay. He said, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to get back into my car, and I need you to follow me. I'm going to take you to jail now.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love this story.
Well, needless to say, I did not have the same reaction that the both of you just had. But for whatever reason, I wasn't really concerned. I think I was just caught up in the moment of living adventurously and being in Thailand, and I thought, cool, I get to go to a Thai jail. And
You broke rule number 1, stay out of jail. Number 2, stay out of the newspaper. And number 3, stay out of hospitals. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Number 4 is don't share your police stories on International Teacher Podcast.
So did you follow him to the police
So he
station?
looked at me and he said, I need you to follow me to jail. And I said, okay. And then he looked at me like I was an idiot because I was an idiot. Like nobody says, okay, I'll follow you. Who says, yeah, sure. Show me where the jail is. Why don't you just let me walk in, close the door, and I'll lock it myself? So I said, yeah, okay, I'll follow you. And then he says, all right, why don't you come over here? So he takes me to a place that is a little bit removed from the other police officers. And he
as
says,
long as you agreed to go to jail, he's taking you to the restaurant for a meal first. You're buying.
yeah. Why don't you just hand me your ATM card and tell me your security
off
number?
to the side from the other.
He brings me off, he brings me off to the side.
Yeah,
and he says,
stops on the way to jail.
So he begins the conversation with you could give me enough money to buy me my whiskey tonight. That's really what he said. And I'll never forget it because it was such an odd thing to say. And I said, yeah, okay, sure.
I love that. Your first question is, how much whiskey do you drink?
So I asked him, how much is that? And he said, how much do you have? And
and you're like, oh, wait, let me count it in front of you.
Well, I'm just continuing on the motif of I am an idiot. So I pull out the money, and he gives me some number. I don't remember what it was, 2,000 baht or something. And I said,
showed him all of your money?
I don't think I did. No. Okay, you don't have to respond so incredulously. Okay, so
But we are.
Yeah, you are. So he said something like 2,000 baht or whatever, and I didn't have the exact change. So I said, I don't have 2,000 exactly. Can you give me change? And
No.
Absolutely. Can you break a bill?
And he did.
Did he pull out a cash register out of his car?
I love that.
Okay, we could.
Little change dispenser.
You could do a down payment.
He gave me change. And
did you do like co-pays over the next couple of months or something, or was it just like a one-time fee?
No, at that point I just gave him my credit card and said, "Look, officer, if you need any more money in the next coming months, just use this." I mean, what's the worst that could happen?
So how much U.S. dollars do you think you ended up paying this guy?
Oh, it was something negligible, like $20.
It's like 40 to 1.
Yeah,
So I mean, if you round it off, or 35 to 40 to 1, and you gave him like $50.
I don't remember how much it was exactly. Yeah. So it was enough to keep me out of jail. That was it.
Kept you out of jail.
And
kept
it was
this guy in whiskey.
It was nice. It was a nice conversation. There was no there was no
but you
rudeness.
didn't get to see the jail. I mean,
no,
there goes
that's
your whole experience.
that's one of my
Maybe
regrets.
if you give him the other $50, he'd take you to the jail.
Hey, there's still time, guys. There's still time.
I'm going back with you. I want to go on vacation with you to Thailand.
I love that.
Most people go to ride the elephants, and you go there just to see what the inside of a jail looks like. That's great. I love this whole. It's a research project. Oh my God, that's.
All right. Enough of the shenanigans. David, anything else you want to tell the ITP crowd?
No, it's been really fun talking to you both, and I enjoy your podcast. And thank you so much for having me on. And
you've been a ton of fun here. Greg, anything you want to say before I bring us out?
I'm still dumbfounded about the story and I'm wondering, how much does it cost to get into the jail there now? I mean, if you bribed him to get out of it, I mean, how much would he have made if he had actually taken you on a tour? Right? Yeah. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Yeah,
I love your sense of humor.
David. You got a great sense of humor.
I have a question for you. It's a little follow-up here. Is there? Do you have a social media that you broadcast? Is there some way people can get in touch with you, or do you want to send it just through us? It's up to you. Anything that you want to share?
You can find me and my numerous stories with law enforcement on LinkedIn. That's how people can find me, is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yep.
And have you written any books you have so many stories. Are you keeping a journal, or are you planning on writing a book about your experiences?
I am writing It's so funny. I am actually writing a book about my time in Japan right now.
That's fantastic. Would you come back on and tell us more about how that book's going, and give Greg some advice on how to sell some books that to more people than just your own family?
Kent, you're gonna make my mom mad.
I bought one too. Okay.
Hey,
you
Greg,
have to come back on and get us all. Yeah.
Greg, do you think your mom would buy my book too?
I'll talk her into it. I'll buy your book for my mom. How about that? I think it's fascinating. I don't think enough teachers write books about their experiences. And once you do have yours published, we will put it on our site. We have a book club for the ITP. We have a lot of stuff on our website if people want to check it out. And that's just a good call out for how did you know to become a guest on our show, or how did you access it?
Through Facebook. There's an international teachers group, and I think that you guys were begging for guests.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, I felt sorry for you.
And the ITP crowd is just tired of hearing from the two of us, so I am glad that you responded to our begging.
I'm happy that you reached out to us. Anybody that wants to be a guest like you are, they can go and find us on Facebook. They can go to itpexpat.com and they can sign up directly, and either with a pre-interview or they can sign up with an interview. David, I want to reach out, make sure that you get a copy of my book too. I'll send that to you in your email if you don't have one already, and we'll go from there. I can't wait to see what your stories that come out, because you've been a great guest, a great storyteller, which you damn well better be if you're an English teacher, right? And I appreciate the fact you've learned the Japanese. So very, very wonderful guest for us.
Thank you very much. I really
let's
appreciate
take us out.
me.
David, thank you so much. On behalf of the ITP with Greg Lemoine and Company, we'd like to thank David Schneer, our guest this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.
How do you say goodbye in Japanese? How do you say goodbye?
Sayonara.
Well, we're friends. We'll say matane.
Matane. Hi.